Ultimately, if you want to live a lifestyle of choice, you're going to need to eliminate the need to work. Now, let me just clarify that. I mean that you may decide that you want to continue working because you're doing something that you love. That's either as an employee of an organization or within your own business. But you need to remove the need to do it. So what that then allows you to do is to have the freedom of time to choose whether you're going to work today, or whether you're perhaps going to do something different today, or maybe you're going to take a week away or 2 weeks away or a month away, whatever it is that you want to do. And the way that you're able to do that in a property business is that you're able to use income to buy assets. But the biggest mistake that I see within the property industry, and the one that is taught so often, is to use assets to buy assets. And what really ends up happening is that people buy, using the assets, to buy assets, they actually buy a lot of debt. And ultimately, it's a very, very slow process and can take 10, 15, 20 years to achieve the desired income. So what I'm going to show you in this video is a much faster way to do this. And hopefully, if you follow along with this, you can achieve that lifestyle of choice in a much faster time frame. Hi. My name is Jim J. Davidson and I'm a property developer. I first got involved in property in 1973 at the age of 16 when my brother and I purchased a flat in the student area of Edinburgh. My current company, Fineside Developments, was established in 2003 and we completed our first new build in 2006. This channel is really dedicated to providing you some of the things that I have learned along the way. I'm not an expert. I don't profess to know everything, but what I do know, I hope, will help you on your property journey. So this technique that I'm going to introduce you to today, I first observed from my grandfather. My grandfather was born in 1884 and he died when I was about 23. So it was very much in the early part of my life. And I'm going to adapt it for property, but in fact he used it with property. He was a dentist and earned a fairly good income from dentistry. In fact, he opened up his own dental practice So he opened up his own dental practice when he was only 23 himself, something that you probably couldn't do today, but obviously we're talking about the beginning of the last century. It was in 1907. So what he was able to do was that he generated very good income from this, and then he bought assets with that income. He bought stocks and shares, but he also bought an awful lot of property, and he took advantage of market opportunities. So during the 1930s, property was really very unpopular. Nobody ever saw the market recovering, but he foresaw that the market would recover. He understood the property cycle, and in fact he was absolutely correct in that, and he was able to amass a lot of property because simply nobody wanted it, and so therefore he was able to take it off their hands at a very, very good price. Now today a lot of people teach you to buy property, and they talk about buying primarily residential property, and they buy it at 25% below market value, which can be achieved, but usually not in a buoyant market like we are in at the moment. It usually is in a much more difficult market. So that would have been post 1973, it would have been post 1989, it would have been post 2007-8, when we had the dip in the property cycle that we get every 18 years. But what people are taught is that they buy a house, almost like Monopoly, the little green houses, and where they get one house, and then what they do is that fundamentally they're supposed to buy that at 25% below market value, and therefore then once they've got that, they can have the house revalued, and then they can buy a second one. And so effectively what they've done is they've got about a 25% equity in that property because but they've been able to take their original investment out. Well, that kind of worked up till about 2007 because lenders were willing to lend on that basis. Since then, it's become very much more difficult to do that. And the reason it's become much difficult to do that is because the lenders got stung, because when the market crashed, they found that people actually had no equity in those properties, and therefore they really had no commitment to the properties. They could walk away, and I can think of several high-profile people in the property industry at that time who walked away, filed bankruptcy, and left several hundred properties basically not on the market, but left several hundred properties for the banks to then pick up the ticket and try and salvage some money from them. Because that was going to be very difficult because, as I say, most of them actually really had 100% debt. But people still push this model, and so effectively what happens is that you need to be able to, you need this property to rise in value in order to be able to pull the money out. And you're going to see a lot of that over the next few years as the market really booms. But what can come about 2026, when the market crashes, then you are going to have a real problem there. Now, the interesting thing is that the banks are beginning to loosen their criteria a bit. And so we are going to see a repeat of this. So if you really want to pursue this model, you really need to wait till about 2028 to in fact, probably 2030 onwards. So it kind of really doesn't work. However, there is a far better way to do this, is to actually, instead of, and you may decide that you want to either invest in residential assets, or you may want to invest in commercial assets. Now, residential assets will give you a return of somewhere usually between 6 and 8, maybe 10% if you're lucky, in terms of the money that's invested in there. Commercial, you should do 12 to about 25%, and perhaps even plus on that, depending on actually how you manage that commercial property. So clearly, commercial property is going to give you a far better return than residential, but I understand that people would certainly want to start with residential because that's perhaps a much more comfortable place to start rather than commercial property. However, how do you actually gain, how do you actually use income? Well, if you've got a very high paying job, then you can use that income, the surplus income. So you need to really claw back your expenditure so that you've got as much surplus income as you can, so that you can then buy your assets, which will then produce you with this residual income. However, as a property developer, the best way is to acquire these assets is through development. And there's two areas of development. There is land development and there is build development. And so by actually finding land that doesn't have permission in place, in other words, you identify an opportunity with land, you can enjoy a significant uplift. Now, typically, land is worth £5,000 to £10,000 an acre as agricultural land, and as development land, in other words, with planning in place, then you got a multiple of that, sometimes 100. Now, it's unlikely you're going to take agricultural land at £5,000 to £10,000 an acre and get planning on it. Possible, depending on what the local plan says in terms of development. But as soon as that becomes part of the local plan, then the opportunity becomes much less. However, you can make a significant income from land development. And then if you build that land out, you make a significant income from there. So if you were able, in this situation where you took a development, you could potentially make 100,000 plus out of that development. In fact, that's probably a fairly low figure, to maybe several hundreds of thousands. And then, so what you would then do is you would then use some of that money then to buy an asset. And as you buy that asset, you maybe only put 25% down on that asset. And then you maybe acquire several of these. And you'll build it up to the base of where you want those assets to be. In other words, what is the income that you want from here to give you the lifestyle that you choose? So using your figures of your 6 to 8 or 10% in terms of residential, or in terms of your commercial income, then how much income does this need to generate to cover your monthly expenditures? By the time that you've covered your monthly expenditures, then you really have that freedom. You don't have to be relying on work. And so therefore, but one of the ways to actually increase the income that comes out of these properties, once you've got several of them, is to then start to pay this debt down so that you end up with zero debt on these properties. Now, the beauty of that is it doesn't matter what the market does, up or down, you are going to have a secure asset. You're not going to be worrying about the banks coming in and asking you to top up the loan because the property maybe has depreciated in value. But more significantly is that the income that you receive from that should remain the same. And in fact, during that period will probably go up. So there's a great opportunity then to build some real assets with real value in them that will, whatever the market does, give you that income, and therefore almost you never need to work again. Now, as I said, you'll probably choose to work because if you're that type of person that's driven, you probably enjoy working and you probably want to continue with that. But that gives you the choice, and that's the real point. The choice to work or not to work, not to have to work. And I think that's the fundamental distinction. Now, it's not about being wealthy or appearing to be wealthy. It's about having that real security so as that you can do the things that you love and you can have complete control of your life. So if you're new to the channel, it's great to have you here. There are now over 70 videos on this site, and there's lots more coming downstream. So please remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell so as you don't miss out on a future video. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos, then click to watch the next video. Please remember to visit our website at builditandprosper.com, Together app, or click on the button on the YouTube header if you're on desktop.